Hello and welcome to the first review roundup of 2021. I'm Liam, the music reviewer, and before we get started today, I want to let you know that there's a playlist down in the description below, Stay Hydrated 2021, that I'll be updating regularly with the best songs that I hear, all the ones that I'm listening to all the time, so go give that a follow. And if there's any albums or EPs that I don't review in this roundup, then put them in the comments, I'll get around to them next time. But until that comes around, we're going to start this review roundup. But before we do, why do they call Aurora a urine cat? I'm really not sure. Oh, I found out why. I don't remember how to dance. It only makes sense that I start this roundup off with an album I've seen nobody discuss on this platform, that being Anna B. Savage's A Common Turn. A hypnagogic journey that continuously amps up the intensity. The greatest compliment that I can give this album is that at no point did I have my attention wavering, even at the points where the personal, introspective nature threatens to overwhelm you. A Common Turn ensures you're in the palm of its art pop hand. The only thing stopping me from properly fawning over A Common Turn is that the vocals, while mostly great, on a rare occasion can kind of cross that thin line into being a bit too bombastic for my taste, but other than that I find no reason not to recommend this album to you, and you've got no excuse for letting it pass you by now. I hope we're clearly understood on that.
Let's go to the corner store and buy some fruit. I would do anything to get you out your room.
No, we're not talking about the alternative name for the Nintendo theme park. It's the debut album from musician Arlo Parks. Collapsing Sunbeams is a bedroom pop type of affair that, when it comes down to how it sounds, I can't fault it. Pleasant and soothing. It may not have been too much of a shake-up, but it was a real treat for my ears. When I tune my ears into what Arlo is saying instead of what she's saying it over, I find that the best and weakest moments of this album pop out to me. When it comes to the strongest songs, it's something like Black Dog, which I can't help but have an affinity for. It is pretty bittersweet and heavy, but there's a wholesome tinge to it all that just gives this song and a good chunk of this album a really human feel, a really authentic feel to it all. On the flip side though, a song like Hope can feel a bit tripe in how the message is being delivered despite its good intent. I did find Collapsing Sunbeams to be a bit of a mixed bag, but I try to be optimistic no matter how difficult that is at the current moment. A humble beginning that could foster an exciting career for Arlo. I really hope it does.
I'm crazy but you like that. I bite back, dances on your nightstand. Never forget
I remember being made aware of Ashnikko when she got a support slot on Danny Brown's UK tour, which, having that sort of signing, had me pretty interested. There's no denying that there's an appeal to be found in her work up to and including her debut mixtape, Demi Devil. She's got a big personality, and when the accompanying beats like Daisy and Deal With It meet Ashnikko on her level, it can be pretty satisfying. For me though, these moments are far and few between, unable to distract me from the phases like Slumber Party and Little Boy, where, despite being less than 3 minutes long, feel like they drag on for far too long, and the botched TikTok sketch Closer adds insult to injury. Do I think this makes Ashnikko a write-off? Absolutely not. I wasn't born yesterday, and there's a whole lineage of musicians who have started off pretty shoddy and then end up producing some really great stuff, so I'll be keeping an eye on her, but more of like a googly eye glued into the back of my head as opposed to my other 7 eyes, my 2 perfectly human eyes. You don't even know about those other eyes. I take power pop records like someone in a cave with down vitamin D gummies, and so when I came across this new Beach Bunny EP, I was excited, albeit a little apprehensive. Maybe the anxiousness was brought on by one too many coffees that day, because after Looping Blame Game, that nervousness was absolutely unfounded. The subject matter might be well discussed at this point, but the peppy, energetic instrumentation and Lily's sometimes soothing, sometimes snappy vocals go down a treat, especially on the eponymous Closer that sounds like if Avril Lavigne was in a Cocteau Twins tribute band, and Lovesick, which opens with the vibrancy of an After Laughter cut. When the only major complaint that I have about your release is that I only wish there was more material, then you find yourself in a pretty fortunate position. It's definitely set the bar high for EPs this year. When it decides to stray into some weirder territories, such as on X, which sounds like the duo were tasked to make a theme for a cyberpunk film, only with slinkies, I can find myself really getting on board with Isles, but these chips are a pop to the shops for some milk and bread as opposed to the Saturday morning stock up that I prefer. If Cuphead's jazzy world had an island dedicated to 90s math rock and post rock, then the end result would be something like Black Country New Road. Their success comes as no shock to those who have been paying attention to them since 2018's Sunglasses, which appears on this debut. Sure, I may have already played it to death, but Isaac having the wisdom of Akinator bestowed upon him is still endlessly entertaining. The other tracks aren't a downgrade either. Track X, despite having some lines that intentionally or not made me wince, radiates a mood that reminds me of Sleepwell Beast, and the best of the new lot opus has a fire alarm horn section that's been blaring in my head since I first heard it. I will say that I don't think this is the best thing that Black Country New Road can produce. I do think that they've got better albums in them just now. It's not quite a Schlegenheim where just like right off the bat they've produced something that's going to really stand the test of time, but I do think they've got something akin to that album somewhere in the banks of their minds just now, so I'm looking forward to seeing that and hearing that whenever it comes about. But as it stands, this is a great debut album that I'll be listening to a fair bit throughout 2021. If there's one thing you can't call Coca-Cola, it's Scottish because she's from Louisiana, but if there's another thing you can't call her, it's complacent. Throughout 2019 she dropped 3 albums that ranged from EDM to mashup. That last one, by the way, Amy Rose, I was smelling from ear to ear throughout that entire thing. Would really strongly recommend that. A Gift to Us All continues the trend of Coca-Cola following any path other than the one she just treaded. I suppose that's not completely true. The mashup DNA of Amy Rose can be found in the interpolation of songs like Neo's Closer, Muse's Hysteria, and My Chemical Romance's Black Parade, which put a big goofy smile on my big goofy face. However, the main direction of this record is breakbeat, and it's largely pretty pleasant. I can imagine the ending to 10-minute long centrepiece Flowering Snakes soundtrack in an alternate universe Greenhouse Zone, and Birthday Girl feels like a serene victory anthem after a hard fought journey right down to the MIDI horns. In its darker, more uneasy moments, it's easy to draw comparisons to some contemporary acts like Machine Girl, but at the end of the day, it's Coca-Cola's reluctance to really settle on one sound which makes this such an engaging listen that makes that 1 hour runtime feel like nothing at all.
I was fighting fire with boxing gloves and armbands around my ankles.
In the same way Dogleg wanted to revitalise a certain hybrid of hyper, heavy emo and pop punk, Codis are trying their hand at a take on the kind of 90s indie rock that would be blasted in countless college dorm rooms. I was a really big fan of their 2016 debut Nuclear Family, and I'm happy to say that Codis have only went from strength to strength with this sophomore record. I think when it comes to the lyrics it's been a huge step up. Just the imagery has a good wallop of glue stuck to the back of it, because when I'm thinking of the volatile romanticism and just the dreamlike nature of some lyrics here that are just kind of present throughout the entire record, just it stuck with me so much. Performances themselves aren't slacking either. Yvonne de Bibbel may have the kind of name you'd expect to hear in a Mighty Bush episode, but with the playful vocal delivery, a gang vocal section, in addition to the Fever Dream lyrics, it's an unabashed highlight. 2021 is only going to get louder and busier to the point where a lot of like really worthwhile albums from early on in the year are going to be forgotten, so pick up this gem, give it a listen, put it in your pocket and show it off to every stranger you meet in the streets and tell them that Liam sent you. It does make me sound like a bit of a mob boss, and I'm not really sure if I meant that or not, but I'm going to stick with it. Fax Gang have made their name on the internet with material that can only be described as sounding like you're trying to stream music off a Nokia brick. Their debut EP seemed more concerned with breaking through the stratosphere and going into hyperdrive above all else, and while it would be difficult to say that Ethernet has a quieter approach, tracks like Fallen and Mirror bide their time in a way that makes the experience feel more textured. These moments act as periods for the ship's batteries to recharge before jumping right back into the fray. It's everything that I could really want from the act's first full-length release, and I really can't wait to see where their career goes next.
Happy birthday to you. I guess I'm nothing new.
With a name like Hospital Bracelet, it shouldn't come as a surprise that this Midwest emo outfit touch on heavy and sensitive topics like a sadist plane operation. That being said though, it's not impossible for them to provide some levity to help the medicine go down, whether that be the math rocky chorus of Happy Birthday, which focuses on processing your abuse on certain dates, or some gallows humour like that clown line on Call Out Cut Feral Rat Anthem. This isn't the type of record that's going to convert anyone who's been reluctant to get into this genre, but if you're somebody that's already into this genre who loves their tearjerker lyrics and their instrumentation that ranges between wallowing and just energetic flailing about, then South Loop Summer is for you.
Don't forget to come and pick up your don't leave no pieces.
While it does come with the expectation that it will last long enough to soundtrack you making some pasta, the only real difference between an EP and an LP is really what the artist decides to call it. Case in point, Hotels, which, while labelled as an EP, has all of the sparkle and polish that you'd expect from a fully fledged album. You might think that it's purely down to the production, and don't get me wrong, the sheen and seduction of a song like Pick Up Your Feelings just screams studio so packed with talented musicians that will break COVID guidelines 10 times over. I've tried this ride out more than a few times and the glossy neo-soul paint hasn't worn off a bit. However, it's with the narrative where Hotel cements itself in its impressiveness. I feel would listen to this release and make shallow comparisons to Cardi B solely because they're both talking about sex, when the fact is, when it comes to art, sex is never really just sex. WAP is about power, and in an instance of Hotels, it too is about power, as well as it is about escape, autonomy, respect, and facing your shortcomings. For all of its promiscuous confidence, this is a really powerful and often quite fragile listen that is wonderfully sequenced. It's got a whole bunch of interludes, and usually that would make me roll my eyes, but for once I've not got a skip button trigger finger. One of the best, just wonderful listens that 2021 has provided so far.
I went from nothing to slut and it wasn't easy, babe. Shout out my bitch, my husband. I love y'all equally.
This new JPEG Mafia release kinda felt like watching someone leading the pack in an egg and spoon race, only to suddenly stop while they're miles ahead and start making an omelette. Not exactly without merit, and definitely takes some skill, but you're so close to a home run, and I don't want a meal with fucking grass in it, okay? As I come to expect from a Peggy release, the production is kinda cool sometimes, but EP2 definitely feels like the most stagnant array of any of his projects so far, when taken into consideration his bars, that more often than not are pretty rotten. Yeah, this is just a bit of a stumble. I'm not off the JPEG hype train by any means, and I'm very much looking forward to whatever the next album he puts out is like, but I'm definitely kind of dropping down from like first class on this train down to standard. KK Slider may have made his name on nice chill acoustic numbers as well as like a bazillion other CDs, but he should be aware that he's not the only musically talented Animal Crossing character, because while Friday Night Funkin' is completely unrelated to the hit Nintendo franchise, it feels like an alias for Isabelle to make some breakbeat dance tunes that would have you gurning. South and Pico are the standout bops, the kind you find yourself humming on a daily basis, but FNF Volume 1 isn't merely just some catchy tunes. High is simply stunning, the hook being pretty breathtaking, Undertale dialogue sounds and all. Lasting under half an hour once you remove all the instrumental versions, FNF Volume 1 just went straight to the top of my Last FM stats, and even though it isn't technically a 2020 release, meaning that it won't be landing on any album of the year list because it was released on Christmas Day 2020, it'll be getting played just as much, if not more, than anything that drops this year. You didn't have to be psychic to foresee a wave of nostalgia for the noughties, much like the rose-tinted glasses the 2010s had for the 80s and 90s. When it comes to the pop-punk stylings on Maggie Lindemann's latest EP, they do the job, eliciting energy and catchiness will be sure to remind you of Avril Lavigne or Blink-182, though never going quite beyond that. The moments I found myself infatuated more weren't this style, it was cuts like Gaslight, which had the noise-rock intensity of a Black Dresses cut, or the hyper-pop-rock anthem Scissorhands. A release that focuses on that, as opposed to the pop-punk revivalism, would just do me so well, I'd be obsessed with that, but when judging what we've got here, it'll do me just fine in the meantime.
My heart can't take any more losses. Can I restart?
Mono Neon is a man after my own heart, someone that is mixing the art of shitposting with some sincerity and heart. The comedy may be hit or miss. Spider-Man was on crack one day, sounds groovy, but comically never goes further than a giggle at the title, whereas Gentrified Chicken with 3Ks is like if Zach Fox had the bass playing skills of Thundercat. Whether it's trying to be funny or not, there's that aforementioned sincerity running through Mono Neon's work, and when it gets to a track like My Heart Can't Take Any More Losses, Banana Peel doesn't just sparkle, it shines, glows and radiates. Mono Neon is a kind of artist that's constantly grinding, so I wouldn't be surprised if I find myself discussing them later on in the year in one of these roundups, but when it comes to this release right here, he set the bar pretty high for himself, though I have no doubts that he can manage to jump over it like some sort of funky kangaroo.
You will come through. No, I do.
Remember that playlist I mentioned at the start of this video? Well, I have this like self-imposed rule that I won't add more than 3 tracks from the one artist on it, and when it came to this Pompoko album, it was a reminder of why I put that on myself. I just found myself adding song after song to this playlist, and who can blame me when Cheater has blatantly skipped to the back of the maths book for the answers to my heart. The opener is home to flourishes of noise, energy and strength that gave me flashbacks to screaming females. Like a Lady showcases vocalist Ola's playfulness, her upper register being played about like a kitten with a ball of yarn. My Candidacy is like a noise rock pantomime. The chorus and intermission as the crew changes the background, all culminating in a climax that would have all the kids giving it a standing ovation, every parent with their fingers in their ears. I haven't even got around to the twists and turns yet, because as peppy as Cheater sounds, there's a dark undercurrent that the album finally gives way to on Andy Go to School. The opening guitars and synths wouldn't be out of place in a Deus Ex game, and there's a parallel to be drawn from Pompoko attempt to ignore this sinister opening and return to their energetic norm, and the titular Andy dreaming during a school shooting. When it came to my first listen to this Pompoko album, I kind of just like wrote it off as being this kind of like punk record that you'd listen to while working out at the gym, but every revisit has just left me mighty impressed, to the point where I put it in my top 3 albums of the year so far. I really am hoping that 2021 can be just like 2018 in terms of just being one of the best years for music, and it seems that the stars may be aligning, because both of those years started off with some pretty cracking records from Shame, and this one is even better than their debut. It takes everything from that album and just runs an extra mile with it. We might not be any closer to drowning in one another's sweat in a mosh pit, but songs like Born in Luton and Snow Day have me craving for those days very, very bad. The latter jolts from end to end, never giving away when it's suddenly going to whip back around like an unpredictable boomerang. It's a kind of cacophony that leaves you in awe that the band can even maintain it. The album may not start on its strongest foot, but Shame follow through like a gymnast, going from that stumble into a forward roll and then going into a sprint, starting a pace that Drunk Tank Pink keeps up for the rest of the record. It's so impressive that my feet started to ache even just writing that sentence there. What a wonderful sophomore effort this is. I suppose complaining that a band called Viagra Boys take the piss too often in place of any kind of authenticity might feel like moaning to customer services that your new jalapeno face mask is making your skin hurt, and it's not like the joke doesn't work. Case in point, opener Ain't Nice, that's sure to soundtrack many a Ring Fit adventure session. After a while though, there's only so many D's nuts jokes you can tell in a Discord call before the group acts like you're muted, and when compared to their contemporaries like Ice Age, I do feel like Viagra Boys need a bit of a shake up before I consider attending their next session.
The old makeup place. Hey, a new weather station!
Tamara Lindman is pretty aware of our need to be in touch with nature and our surroundings, as made evident by her latest album under the Weather Station name. Whether it be the observational parking lot that sees the beauty of nature continue amidst all the noise and turmoil of everyday life, or the late stage capitalism criticising opener Robber, she has her finger on the pulse, be it concrete or be it organic. Connecting all of this is some lush instrumentation which feels like it should have like a designer price tag stuck to it. I had an absolute blast unraveling this album, and I just found it to be a pretty beautiful listen.
All my favorite songs are slow and sad.
There is a timeline where Can't Stop Partying was backed up by an orchestra and landed on Pitchfork's Best Songs 2009, but Less streaming, more reviewing, in this case the first of two 2021 albums that Weezer are putting out. Considering how last minute its release was, announced just 11 days before it dropped, I'm surprised by how competent OK Human is. Granted, I do think that if it weren't so orchestra heavy it would feel pretty run of the mill for the band, but there's some nice moments like River Cuomo having a Phantom of the Opera moment on Playing My Piano, and a surprisingly fragile Mirror Image. It's a shame that the technophobic lyricism and the orchestration just never really feel all that daring. It's all just pretty fine. The lyrics can actually be pretty horrible at points, but I didn't have a horrible time listening to this album, nor did I have a blast. It's just something that I'm not in any rush to revisit, but I'm perfectly okay with it existing. If you were burned by like Pacific Daydream, then maybe give this a curious go if you're feeling up to it.
Not from the top, make it drop. That's some wet ass pussy. Now get a bucket and a mop. That's some wet ass pussy.
If you're looking to scratch that Neil CC Rega or that Girl Talk itch in 2021, then I would probably get in touch with your doctor first, but also I would recommend this William Moranci album. It's definitely at its best on songs like Napster or Balls, where there's a whole hodgepodge of samples that keep you on your toes and tie into a specific comedic theme or punchline, but there are also some genius mashups, specifically Pericus. I'll let you guess what two songs it consists of. Any album of this nature is going to be pretty hit or miss. Lopez and Superman kind of threw me off my groove a little bit, but for the most part I just had a blast with this record and it got more than a few belly laughs out of me. So yeah, I'd recommend it if you're just looking for something that's going to put a smile on your face. Odyssey tends to be attached to rock music or a certain Italian plumber's best 3D game, don't at me, but I don't think there's anything stopping this Yusu album being attached or described by that very word. While it may not be a staggeringly lengthy venture, if anything I kind of wish tracks like Futuro would make themselves comfortable and stick around a bit longer. The journey it goes on in paying homage to a country's music, in this case China, and these native instrumentals, and how they're complemented with some lovely flubbery drums and bass. Sonically feels like an adventure, even if it's just barely enough to soundtrack your trip to the shop and back. And there we have it, reviewing 22 albums in 22 minutes, and I'd like to say thank you for watching. If you did enjoy it, then please leave a like, comment any albums or EPs you want to see me talk about in the next roundup in May, and I'd like to say a big thank you to my beautiful patrons whose names are on screen just now. £1 gets you early access to every video that I put out, and £3 gets your name on screen. So if you want to consider that, if you can, then go down to the description below, that's where my Patreon is, and also where my playlist with all my favourite 2021 songs are. I have got some big projects on the way, including a sequel to a video that a few of you seem to like, so that'll be coming out in a couple of weeks. You can keep up to date with me on Instagram, but until then, take care, stay safe and stay hydrated.